Hi everyone, my name's Vicki Sutton. I'm CEO of Melbourne City Mission and welcome to Sleep at the G chat. I'm so excited to be here today with the Lord Mayor of the City of Melbourne, Sally Capp. But before we get going, let me start by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land which we're all meeting on today through this virtual medium, the peoples of the Kulin Nation, and pay my respects to elders past and present. I'd also like to acknowledge all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people joining us for this video and working throughout Melbourne City Mission services. Sleep at the G this year has been impacted by COVID. It's a mass participation event where we attract over 2,000 sleepers, and as a result, for the safety of everyone, we can't run it this year in the same way that we have. And so we're doing what we can this year, and we'll talk during the session about some of the different ways people are still coming in to support Melbourne City Mission and support Sleep at the G. But I do want to acknowledge what a really difficult time this is that we're all navigating. And we're seeing the impacts of COVID across our community in Australia and also internationally. And we know how much it's impacting organisations and people and your family in different ways. And so we're extraordinarily grateful for everyone that's able to continue to support us, to raise awareness for youth homelessness and continue to help us fundraise to raise some money for our youth homelessness projects. So thank you. Now I'd like to introduce our special guest and our Sleep at the G ambassador, the Lord Mayor of the City of Melbourne, Sally Capp.
Hello, Vicki. Do you like my PJs? No, not my PJs. I'm not in them yet, but I'm looking forward to getting into them and sleeping outside to be part of this amazing initiative. Well done you for innovating in this new world that we have to make sure that we can still feel part of a community that is doing great things for your organisation, because you are right up there as a benchmark in terms of the services for our youth and ways in which you're transforming people's lives. So it's just lovely to be involved.
Thank you, Sally. I'm glad you pointed out my PJs. It is my Elmo onesie for the event, and tonight I'm going to be sleeping on the concrete with my family at home. It's a little bit warmer than at the MCG, but I'm asking all of my friends and families and colleagues to forgive me as I'm looking for donations. But I don't normally wear this. It is a special outfit.
But I'm glad I got it right when I said PJs then, and I insult you. Now, tell us a bit more, Vicki, about exactly what you do at your organisation to change kids' lives, because the City of Melbourne is so proud to be a supporter of Melbourne City Mission and particularly Front Yard Youth Services. But your expertise and the way that your team deliver these services and reach out to the youth, bring them into a safe environment, and then work on ways not just to help them, but actually put them on a new trajectory is extraordinary. So tell us more.
Well, thank you, Sally. Look, it's probably worth starting by talking about, how many young people are affected in Victoria. So 2 out of every 5 Victorians who experience homelessness are under the age of 25. And that's around 6,000 young Victorians every night who don't have somewhere safe to sleep. It doesn't mean that they're all rough sleeping. In fact, that's only the tip of the iceberg. But they might be couch surfing between friends, or they might be in temporary or unsafe or insecure accommodation. So you mentioned Front Yard. Front Yard is the access point for young people into the whole homeless system in Victoria, and Melbourne City Mission run that in the CBD. And every year we see around 2,000 young people at Front Yard. Around 30 to 60 every day come in with nowhere safe to sleep that night. And there's usually only a handful of crisis beds available. So the team do a really magnificent job of working with young people to identify who actually, doesn't have another solution for that night, so that we can allocate those scarce refuges and then finding somewhere else for the other young people to stay until we're able to find them a refuge or a short-term crisis bed. And that's the point at which Melbourne City Mission can really work with young people to end their experience of homelessness, to get them out of homelessness. And as you said, in Front Yard, you know, you helped us launch the redeveloped Front Yard a year ago, and we were able to incorporate another 18-bed refuge actually in the city with significant fundraising from Sleep at the G. So that's really enabled us to develop a broader suite of services, including mental health, drug and alcohol, 24/7 stand-up services, sensory rooms, and a therapeutic approach to really help young people address a range of issues that have brought them to homelessness.
I think one of the great things about Sleep at the G, or that sense of sleeping outside for the night, is it really brings home to all of us that even if you're sleeping in your backyard, or in my case, sleeping on a balcony, you get a sense, it's not just that it's uncomfortable, but you feel so vulnerable. And imagine doing that on the streets of Melbourne as a young person is devastating. For us at the City of Melbourne, we know that we represent a very caring community, and that's why we're investing in organisations like yours, in services that can make such a difference. But I also think what you do so well is you create a safe environment, because if kids have been in this vulnerable position for some time, if they feel fearful because of the circumstances that they're facing, knowing that there is a safe, welcoming place where they can belong and they can receive the sort of support they need, no judgment, only care, I think is just absolutely critical.
Yeah, you know, you're so right, Sally. You know, young people find themselves homeless through no fault of their own. You know, over half of the young people that we see at Front Yard have come from violence in the family home. Around 40% have mental health concerns, and really tragically about 20% come out of the state care system. So it's not just the experience of their time on the streets before they find a safe place, but it's also their experiences that have led them to that. As City of Melbourne have been an amazing partner, both in supporting Front Yard and funding for our Front Yard services. And I've seen your passion as well as the Lord Mayor for making a real ambitious difference to homelessness in the city. Do you want to talk a little bit about that, Sally?
Yes, well, I've actually been Lord Mayor for 2 years. This is the week when it happened 2 years ago, and this anniversary reminds me of so many things that I've learned in this role. I think for many of us, we care and we have an awareness of homelessness as an issue, but since becoming Lord Mayor, I've really come to understand the complexity of the issues that bring people to a point in their lives where they're experiencing homelessness, or they're rough sleeping, or they're couch surfing. And what also really confronted me is that we just don't have enough places, safe places for kids and older people to be able to go to in the evenings, to find a safe place to sleep. To me, it's a human right. It's a basic need that we have a responsibility, all of us in the community, to do what we can to provide that basic human right for everyone. And so learning more about it and understanding the complexity and what more needed to be done really motivated me to get more involved in this issue, because I know at the City of Melbourne there's been a commitment to this issue, but I also know from the correspondence that I receive, it's the number one thing that people write to me about is homelessness. And it's not anger or fear or fix this, I don't want to be confronted with it. It's people saying, we see it, how can we help? And that's why, again, initiatives like Sleep at the G are great, because it's a way that people can get involved. They can make a big difference by fundraising but also by learning more about this complex issue and the need to look at people who are sleeping rough in our streets and say, this is a human being that deserves to be respected and valued as a member of our community, and we should be doing more to help. And as I said, that's been a really big motivator for me, is to humanise this issue and to work with leaders like you and organisations like MCM where we can really make a difference. And that's the commitment we've made, is that we need to make sure that across our community, not just in the City of Melbourne, across our community, that there are facilities so that everybody has an option of a safe place to sleep every night, with support services and the right sort of environment to actually create a disconnect from the circumstances they find themselves in and a new trajectory for their lives. It's not an easy thing to do. It takes perseverance. It takes a lot of resources, leadership and commitment. But I believe in the City of Melbourne, we really do have all of those components. And if we have a little bit more of that support in terms of some money to deliver on these things, it really does make a difference. I want to keep coming back to the fact that this is all about fundraising. But again, our budget has just come out, and we have reconfirmed our support for Front Yard. We've reconfirmed our support for a number of other organisations that do amazing things around our city, including the Night Cafe that is like a beacon also in the evening for people that need help. But we are also maintaining our on-street support services. It's an amazing team of people that go out and they have conversations with rough sleepers, people experiencing homelessness, and they're able to then guide them into Front Yard where we know they're going to receive expert support and some good options for the night ahead, the week ahead, the year ahead, and hopefully a better lifetime ahead.
That's great, Sally. I mean, it's wonderful to know, you know, we have such a strong partnership with the City of Melbourne, and we share a real ambition, you know, to really resolve homelessness. And for Melbourne City Mission, Sleep at the G is all about, you know, how can we continue to add new resources, new youth homelessness resources to end youth homelessness. So Sleep at the G this year is, you know, fundraising for a new refuge in the west of the city. And we're in the middle of building a 10-bed new crisis accommodation in Werribee. It's got a couple of family rooms, children playrooms, and it's very much, you know, designed to help young people with services wrapped around living skills, help with engaging with employment, help engaging with education. So it is a magnificent project, and we're so fortunate that the Victorian Government have contributed to it, but Melbourne City Mission has also contributing to it for fundraising. And Sleep at the G was actually our very big goal of Sleep at the G, to fundraise for the West Refuge. So we do still have quite a bit of a funding hole there, and we're doing everything we can through what we can achieve online this year, but you know, ongoing in different ways to make sure that we can still build this refuge this year.
Good. Look, one of the things, Vicki, I really love and I've seen at the facility in the city is the quality of the accommodation, the thoughtfulness that's gone into the facilities. And I think it really reflects back on the guests that come to stay there, is to say you are important to us and we really value you. This isn't about just making do or people sort of bunking down. This is actually about creating an environment that says we respect and value you. I know you'll be doing the same at Werribee. I encourage everybody to get involved in the fundraising. And I think it's terrific as well that other big organisations are bringing their employees and their families and their teams to get involved in Sleep at the G. I know that PwC puts a big effort in every year, and NAB's doing the same this year. Who are some of the other organisations that have got right behind it?
You know, I wouldn't mind mentioning some of the organisations that have jumped in, particularly as COVID's really affected our organisation. And, you know, there have been a lot of challenges with COVID, but there have also been some real silver linings. And one of the silver linings have been the amount of organisations that have contacted us to see how they can help. And for example, I'm just having a look at my list, RACV has donated 2,500 meals to help us feed people. Uniglow has donated face masks, which we all know how hard it is to get hold of face masks. ANZ have donated 100 laptops and 50 mobile phones for our young people who are homeless. And that enables them during this time when we can't do as much face-to-face to have some connectivity. And we received a van load of winter clothing from Adventure Line and Ducam. And we've had lots of other organisations, large and small, ring us up and say, look, how can we help? And it's just amazing. Some of that's been financial contributions, like we had a 40,000 donation from Tetra Larval Group and 25,000 from Newcrest Mining. So just wonderful organisations we haven't engaged with before who've reached out to us to see how they could help during COVID-19.
Oh, that's so heartening to hear that even at a time when, as we know, this pandemic has caused so many issues, a lot of desperation and devastation of people deeply impacted in so many ways, from economic impacts through to mental and emotional impacts. So to see the community still rallying around to find ways to help is absolutely fantastic. And frankly, we can't do it without them, can we? I mean, there's so much that government can do in partnership with MCM, but it's actually the broader collaboration across the corporate sector and then individuals and philanthropists who make such a difference.
Well, it's very true, Lord Mayor. You know, even on a project like the West Refuge and on Front Yard, you know, it's the collaboration through the Property Industry Foundation, bringing building organisations in to help us build, pro bono resources for architects, planners, etc. You know, it really is a collaboration between all levels of government, between corporates and then philanthropists and fundraisers and sleepers like Sleep at the G to bring any project to life.
Well, I hope that your kids, the clients of MCM, feel the big group hug that comes through activities like this, because we are doing it because we care and we want to help them.
Thank you very much, Lord Mayor, for joining us today and for helping us launch our Sleep at the G event in a quite unusual way. And to everyone that's you know, watching us, you can still get involved in any way that you like. There is a website, sleepattheg.com.au, and there are many different ways. You can do something like I'm doing and Sally's doing, sleep on the floor, sleep on your balcony. We've had people make artworks out of toilet rolls for the MCG. People go camping in their own backyards or sleeping on their couch. We're very flexible this year, a chance to connect, have some fun, raise awareness and raise whatever dollars our community can afford this year to help us with Sleep at the G to end youth homelessness.